Yes, folks, it's true. Universal Orlando is bleeding guests right now. People are avoiding the parks, and as a result, Universal's attendance has not only dropped, but has fallen off a cliff. Though both Universal Orlando theme parks have had a stellar bounce back in the last couple years, they both saw a staggering 9.3% drop in attendance just last year in 2023. And just so we're clear here, these are self-reported numbers. Universal provided these statistics, so the fact that both parks dropped 9.3%, I don't know if that's a happy coincidence or Universal's just rounding numbers. And in fact, the drops at least one of these parks could have been more significant than what's even listed here. But regardless of that, let me tell you folks, that is not a typical attendance drop for a theme park. Like, these do not happen that often, right? You might see a couple percentage points here and there when a park has a bad year, but for the most part, if you're seeing drops at this level, that could be catastrophic levels of bad things happening at the park if you're losing this many guests. So if you're Universal right now, you might be saying, the sky is falling, the sky is falling, the sky is the limit. Because actually, what if I told you that an attendance drop of this magnitude is actually a great thing for Universal? You'd probably call me insane or mentally deranged, and though I will not contest either of those statements, what I will say is you cannot deny that I could very well be correct. Let me explain, folks. Do we know why Universal lost this amount of attendance? I think that's very important to break down and understand exactly why an attendance drop of this magnitude happened and what could very well be the cause of it. Because again, like I said earlier, this is not a typical drop. These do not happen all the time. This is a very rare sight to see, especially for a park of Universal size and scale. Well, one reason could very well be because the parks themselves are not really appealing to guests as much as they had been. I mean, after all, the last major addition that the Universal Parks got was Velocicoaster back in 2021. And though that really excited guests all the way through 2022, there were no new attractions added by Universal in 2022, and the 2023 edition they had lined up in Villain Con Minion Blast did not open until late in the year. It wasn't until the second half of the year that attraction opened. So it's very possible that guests not seeing much new things to do at Universal and their last major addition having been 2 years prior, that maybe guests weren't as interested in visiting Universal as a result. Not to mention that Villain Con Minion Blast, even after it did open, maybe didn't necessarily excite guests in a major way because the ride itself was a bit underwhelming, so maybe it didn't really drive attendance in the way that Universal had hoped. This certainly could have been a major factor and could have been a reason why some people avoided Universal in 2023, but let's be honest, folks, if we chalked up every 9% drop in attendance to a break of 2 years in between new attractions, there would literally be 5 people in Animal Kingdom right now. That's it. Like, yes, okay, gaps in between new major significant attractions definitely can drive down attendance, but it's not going to happen all in 1 year like this, right? You would typically see 1 to 2%, maybe 3% drops in attendance year over year. You wouldn't see a 9% drop in 1 year only after a 2-year gap. That just wouldn't happen. And again, if it did, then Animal Kingdom, given the gaps between new attractions there, would literally have 0 guests in the park. It'd literally be closed. It'd be permanently closed at this point if that was actually how guests behaved. But it's not. So yeah, maybe we can go ahead and chalk up a percentage point or two of that 9% drop to the fact that there has been a gap between major significant attractions, but there's just no way that that is the sole reason for this 9% drop. However, there could be another factor at play outside of Universal themselves that could help explain this drop. As I mentioned earlier, Universal had a nice bounce back leading up to this attendance drop. A bounce back from what? From the parks being closed throughout 2020 and being restricted in how they were able to operate in 2020 and 2021. Ultimately, the COVID pandemic resulted in a huge attendance drop at every theme park pretty much worldwide. But once 2022 rolled around and things had kind of gotten back to some semblance of normalcy, attendance at theme parks, at least in North America, spiked like crazy. After not being able to visit theme parks for the past 2 years pretty much, guests had this insane amount of pent-up demand for theme parks that they just came coming in droves that year in a way that we never really have seen before, as attendance growth year over year versus 2021 at a lot of these parks was absurd. Pretty much the only parks that didn't gain attendance in this year was Six Flags parks because their CEO was being a bonehead idiot and was raising prices while not adding anything new to the park. So people just avoided them. It was pretty easy. But everyone else was doing fantastic. And Universal was no exception to this, as they gained attendance so rapidly that they actually were just a smidgen off of their 2019 attendance numbers at Universal Studios Florida and actually surpassed their attendance numbers in 2019 for Islands of Adventure, meaning that they had the most attendance at Islands of Adventure in a single year in 2022. And that cannot be said for other theme parks in North America. Nonetheless, in Orlando, the Disney World parks were literally millions of guests off, and still are to this day, mind you, from where they were in 2019. And yet Universal was right up against that and actually surpassed that at Islands of Adventure. Insane. But here's the kicker, folks, is that yes, because of this pent-up demand, 2022 was a great year. 2023 might have suffered a bit because guests simply had already sort of exhausted their interest in theme parks after being so excited to revisit in 2022. They may have got their visits in and then said, okay, 2023, I do not need to return to a theme park. And given how much Universal had grown in attendance compared to everyone else in the market, it's very possible that this drop in demand might hurt them more than other players that didn't grow quite as much. But just how much did this drop in demand really have an impact in the market? Well, I mean, you look at Florida theme parks in general, they saw a drop of just 0.6% year over year from 2022 to 2023, which, yeah, I mean, that's not great to see, but that basically means that attendance remained flat. That doesn't really explain how a park like Universal could drop over 9% in attendance when the rest of the market is remaining relatively flat. That doesn't really seem to track. It makes even less sense when you consider that the overall North America theme park market was actually up 3% in attendance year over year in 2023. So clearly this drop in demand, quote unquote, it did certainly reel things back for the industry as far as, getting back to those 2019 attendance levels, but it did not have this major sort of impact or pullback that would have resulted in a 9% drop for Universal. Again, maybe this is a percentage point or two that's contributing to that 9% drop, but there's just no way that this, combined with the gap in between significant attractions, is enough to account for such a massive drop at Universal, especially considering that we know that this drop off in demand, quote unquote, did not have the same level of impact at other parks or even other parks within their own market. So I'm kind of left a little baffled here, folks. Did Universal just draw the short end of the stick? I just don't understand. What happened here? It doesn't make much sense, except there is one factor we have yet to consider as to why an attendance drop could have happened at Universal of this magnitude. And this last piece of the puzzle is really where I get off saying that this attendance drop is actually a good thing for Universal. And it's very simple, folks, because I got two words for you. Epic Universe. Universal's brand new theme park opening in 2025. You see, folks, like we established, these two reasons in and of themselves is not enough to explain away a 9% drop in attendance. So the rest of this drop has to be attributed to the fact that Universal has a brand new theme park opening in just 1 year from now, but 2 years from when this, attendance drop happened, and guests are holding off their trips for when that opens, which is kind of crazy to think because Universal has not really started promoting Epic Universe until this year, right? They haven't started putting out promotional material or marketing material until this very year, kind of letting people know what's coming to Epic Universe, what the details are, and when it's opening. Obviously, us as theme park enthusiasts already knew about Epic Universe well before this, right? We were well aware of it when it was announced, and we've kept it in the back of our minds ever since then. But for the general public, many of them probably either didn't know about Epic Universe or simply didn't care that it was coming and were still going to make their trips in 2023 anyways. At least that was the belief that I had about the general public. The fact that we saw such a drastic drop at Universal kind of proves two things. One, that the general public is already shockingly aware of Epic Universe and is already cognizant of the fact that they're going to be visiting in 2025 or 2026 and are thus holding off their Universal trips until then, which is kind of crazy considering that Universal has not really done much to promote it as of this point in 2023. And it most importantly proves that people are extremely hyped up for this. They're very excited about this. They want to visit Epic Universe. Otherwise, they wouldn't be holding off their trips in 2023 for a park that's opening in 2 years' time. And you might be saying, is this really surprising? Of course people are waiting for Epic Universe. Duh, of course they're holding off their trips. But it is surprising because historically speaking, that has not been the way that consumers have behaved when a brand new theme park is opening, even in the Orlando theme park market. When Animal Kingdom opened, the 2 years leading up to that, Disney World saw attendance growth at all their parks, and Magic Kingdom in 1997, the year before Animal Kingdom opened, saw an increase of over 3 million guests in 1 year. That's craziness in and of itself, but the fact that it happened the year before a brand new theme park opened showed that previously, consumers typically did not hold off their trips prior to a brand new theme park opening. Whether that's because they didn't really have that much interest in the new theme park and thought that they could just visit it whenever, or like, okay, I'll get to that when I get to that. Or if they were saying, well, I'm just going to visit again next year anyway, so whatever. I don't know. Either way, what we do know is that this is not typical behavior, and we saw it before Islands of Adventure opened too. University of Florida, again, grew attendance over the course of the 2 years leading up to Islands of Adventure. And that's even with Animal Kingdom being open in the market. You would expect University of Florida to potentially lose attendance with Animal Kingdom in the market, but even then, it's still an attendance growth over those 2 years. So this is all to say that we are in unprecedented levels of hype right now that we've never seen before for a brand new theme park. We have never seen this level of interest and excitement in a new theme park, period. It's never happened. The fact that so many people are holding off on their trips 2 years in advance for this park is insane. We've never seen it to the point where it actually had such a major impact against the attendance across the entire resort. That has never happened before. And here's the thing, folks. I don't think that this built up interest in Epic Universe is only affecting the Universal parks. Remember how I mentioned that the Florida theme park market's attendance was down 0.6% in 2023. That was not just because the Universal parks lost attendance. There were other parks in the market that lost attendance, namely the two SeaWorld parks, SeaWorld Orlando and Busch Gardens Tampa. They both saw slight drops in attendance. Now, maybe this could be chalked up to people, again, waiting for Epic Universe and just holding off on Orlando trips in general. But I actually think in this case, SeaWorld kind of made their own bed because throughout 2021 and 2022, when they were seeing insane spikes in attendance, they were jacking up prices like crazy. I mean, some of the things in these SeaWorld parks cost more than they would cost you at Disney World for a lower quality product. It was insane. So I think a lot of people just kind of said, okay, you're jacking up prices on me. I'm going to stop coming. And that's ultimately what happened in 2023. So I think they kind of made their own bed. It's possible maybe Epic Universe had an impact there, but that was mainly their own doing that caused an attendance drop there. But what's most notable is that 2 Disney World theme parks dropped attendance in 2023. Animal Kingdom and Hollywood Studios, dropping 2.8% and 5.5% respectively. Let me tell you folks, you do realize that the North America theme park market is largely driven by the performance of Disney World because of how high its attendance is there. So the fact that the theme park market went up in North America by 3% year over year, and somehow 2 Disney World theme parks dropped attendance is insane. That does not happen, folks, right? When the market goes up, Disney World parks go up. The fact that these 2 parks dropped attendance in 2023 is shocking. It's quite frankly shocking. And it's even more shocking when you consider the fact that, like we mentioned earlier, the Disney World parks are not even close to where they were in 2019. They still have millions of guests to make up to get to where they were prior to the pandemic. They are nowhere close to that. So the fact that you are losing attendance when you still are far off from completing your comeback story is insane. It's actually crazy. The fact that this was not headline news and the fact that Universal, their drop of 9%, that was the big feature story. That was the headline story. Universal crumbles, when really the fact that 2 Disney World parks dropped attendance before they've even gotten close to where they were in 2019 is insane. At least Universal could claim that in 2022, their parks were already basically at where they were in 2019. So this drop is not like that painful for them because they're still in a good place attendance-wise. Hollywood Studios and Animal Kingdom still have a ways to go to get back to where they were in 2019. And let's not beat around the rose bush here. There's really two reasons why Hollywood Studios and Animal Kingdom saw a drop in attendance. I mean, for one, they're bottom of the barrel at Disney World, right? They're the easiest parks for guests to cut off their trip if they want to add a Universal or a SeaWorld or whatever. After all, they do have the least amount to do compared to Magic Kingdom and Epcot. They're not even close. And they also have the least amount of rides, and they've also gone the longest without getting anything new of any sort of major significance. So it's no surprise that guests are cutting those at a pretty rapid rate. But as we've seen, that's not been reason enough for attendance to drop at Animal Kingdom or Hollywood Studios. However, now that we've seen Epic Universe interest and hype start to enter the chat, and it start to make its presence known as far as people holding off their trips or maybe making shorter trips in 2023 as opposed to doing a long trip, maybe saving that long trip for 2025, 2026 when Epic Universe is open, it turns out that level of interest, that level of hype, it's not just big enough to impact Universal, it's big enough to hurt the low-hanging fruit of Disney World. That is a problem. And you want to talk about who should be scared right now? It's not Universal, it's Disney. The fact that Epic Universe could be having an impact on attendance at the Disney World parks now, 2 years before opening, is an extreme issue because I think it was believed for many years that Epic Universe would not have an impact on Disney World until years after opening. And in fact, it would be kind of this tide that raises all ships. But now what we've seen is that Epic Universe is apparently such a major tsunami that it's actually drawing out attendance leading up to its opening. And it's even pulling from the Disney World parks, meaning that Hollywood Studios and Animal Kingdom, they're already getting beat up now. Do you really think that attendance is going to grow in 2024 at these parks? It could, but it doesn't seem very likely. I mean, we pretty much know that attendance is down more this year than it was last year, just based on looking at the revenue numbers and the profits of Disney and Universal, right? We can already kind of tell that attendance is going to be down again this year, as you would expect with the promotion of Epic Universe being increased, more interest in Epic Universe being created, more knowledge of Epic Universe being created, and more people holding off their trips because the park is only 1 year away from opening. I guarantee you that attendance is going to be down even more at Universal, and it's going to be down more at these two low-hanging fruit parks, and maybe even at Epcot and Magic Kingdom, who knows? But what we can say for sure is that Hollywood Studios and Animal Kingdom are already going to take a beating leading up into 2025. And even if they do see a tide raises all ships sort of impact where they get to grow attendance in 2025 and maybe even 2026, do we really think that these parks are ever going to get back to their 2019 attendance levels at this rate? I'm not really convinced they will. I'm really not. It seems that that ship has sailed and Universal has taken all the passengers for themselves already, even though it hasn't even reached the dock yet. So this kind of brings me to a prior prediction that I had made in a previous video, that Epic Universe upon opening would likely see attendance drops at the existing two Universal parks, as many guests would flock from those parks to visit Epic Universe and they would kind of get left in the dust. And Disney World parks would largely be unaffected by the opening, at least in the first few years. But now that we're already seeing Epic Universe start to hit attendance, not only at the existing Universal parks, but even at the lower tier Disney World parks, it really makes me think that actually, not only will Epic Universe have a fantastic year one, probably bigger than we would have even initially imagined, but also we could see attendance growth at the existing Universal parks in a big way if people are already holding off their trips at those parks in particular until 2025 and 2026. And perhaps the impact against the Disney World parks could actually be greater in those first 2 years than I had even initially predicted. I'm sure that when Universal saw attendance numbers down in the beginning part of 2023, they were probably a little shook. They were probably not very happy. They were probably a bit disappointed, in fact, especially coming off of such a great year in 2022. But now that the year is wrapped up and they've seen the impact against Hollywood Studios and Animal Kingdom and their attendance dropping there, I think there's no doubt that Universal has turned that frown upside down and they've just put on this absolutely disgusting smirk because they know that they are winning right now, and it doesn't matter what the media or the pundits are saying. It doesn't matter what the numbers show, because really, there's a lot more to the story than what you're seeing in that 9.3% attendance drop. And Disney, on the other hand, you might be wondering, why did they announce all this new stuff at the recent D23 Expo for stuff that's supposed to open in the next 5 years? Well, now you know why, because they got very scared looking at these 2023 attendance numbers. There's no doubt about it. This was the nail in the coffin that scared Disney enough to actually do something. There's all the proof you need in my books. Anyways, let me know guys think in the comments. Do you agree with my sort of analysis here? Do you think that this attendance drop actually does indicate an increased level of interest in Epic Universe than we had previously anticipated? Or do you think that's just an attendance drop and that Universal actually is struggling and this is a bad thing, just point blank in the period? Let me know in the comments. Love to hear the say, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.